Hello, my name is Ismail. I'm a fetal maternal specialist, and I want to thank you for joining me in this video where I want to share with you my experience and my journey to smooth, calm, and confident speech. The ultimate smooth speaking system of Michael Williams has transformed the way I speak over a 4 to 5 month period, right? Where previously I was inconsistent, where I used to get stuck. And over the 4 to 5 month period, it has transformed me from inconsistency and disfluent speech to a point where I'm now very confident in myself, in how I speak. Quite happy to stand up in a crowd, in a meeting, in a presentation, in an interview, in a press briefing, whatever the case may be, and I'm sure I can see it through without having any disfluencies. This is a major transformational step for me, and because of that, I thought I will share with you my personal experience on how I got there. So before I get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist, and I'm a fetal maternal specialist. And in this neck of the woods, I'm referred to as a super specialist. So I am very busy. I have a very tight schedule, as you might imagine, rare, scarce skills and all. But I want to tell you that being busy did not deter me from immersing myself into the ultimate smooth speaking system of Michael Williams. The reason I was able to integrate it and able to follow it to the T was because I really wanted to be able to speak clearly, to be confident, and to be able to stand up in a presentation or stand up amongst a group of people or my peers and be able to communicate with them exactly what I want to say. What you don't want is that you are disfluent, you're switching words, and you are trying to say something that you don't really want to say, and that makes you not as intelligent as you think you are, as you know you are. Because remember, the people out there cannot see what's in your head. They only see what you communicate. And if you have the ability and you have the potential to speak clearly and to speak well and to be able to communicate your talent and what you know, and you're not doing that, not only are you missing out, but those people around you that need to hear what you say will be missing out as well. So when I stumbled onto Michael Williams's speech system, what attracted me to it almost immediately was the strong scientific basis on which it is based, the science of neuroscience. Michael speaks about neural connections, about myelination, about tightening the myelination, about neural networks, about how long it takes to form a habit. All of this scientific basis, and I did my own research about it as well. And I came to the conclusion that this program is solid science. And that is what immediately attracted me to it. And I realized that if it had such a strong, solid scientific base, it was really going to work. So if I can structure how I went around to deal with this program, I can tell you that the first phase was an understanding phase of what the science of this program was. Then I accepted that it's going to work. Then I went through a cognitive phase where I began to understand the techniques that are used and that Michael was talking about in order to improve your speech. And the last one is the reproductive phase, where I began to practice. Firstly, formal practice, and then informal practice, where I began to transfer the information that I learned and I was practicing into real life situations. So that's the kind of road that I began to take. So the first few weeks was spent on trying to understand the science and get myself affair with it and see on what it was based. And once I was happy with that, and I was convinced that this is pure science on which it was based, I began to learn all the techniques that Michael was speaking about: extending, inflecting, pausing, relaxation, airflow linking, etc., 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 as Michael has set it out in his program. So I began to understand these techniques, how to use them, what do they mean, and how they improve your speech. Once I began to understand how these techniques work, I then moved over to modeling. Now, it's very important before you model is that you understand the techniques, because when you model, what you really want to do is you want to recognize or identify the various techniques, what Michael calls the Pro 90D techniques, that are used when you are modeling. So when Michael is inflecting, you will inflect. When he extends, you will extend. When he pauses, you pause. But those are all techniques that Michael has taught you before the modeling. So the first 2 or 3 weeks of my journey in trying to achieve smooth, calm, and confident speech was trying to understand and learn about the various techniques and try and use them in my everyday speech. So that I would refer to as a cognitive phase. So what would happen was, in a conversation, either with my patients or with family or with friends, I would take one technique. I would take one technique and say, okay, today I'm going to use this technique, like extending. So I will try and in my conversation do extending. Or the next day I would say, okay, I'm going to use inflecting. And then I would use inflections. And maybe a week later I would say, look, I'm confident enough now to use both extending and inflecting. And I would use both. Then I would go on to word finishing or blending, etc., etc. So this is a process. It's not something that you learn overnight. And it's not something that you would expect results overnight. Okay, there's peaks and there's troughs, and you need to understand that your speech will do that initially. Initially, that's going to happen. But as you become more aware with all the techniques, you become better at your speech. And it has what is kind of, I like to refer as a positive feedback mechanism, that the more positive experiences you have, the more confident you get. And the more confident you get, the more calmer and smoother is your speech. Because one of the big areas in achieving smooth, calm, and confident speech is that you have to be confident and you've got to be relaxed. You've got to know that you are going to be able to follow through with a particular presentation, an interview, a speech, or whatever the case may be. So once I learned the techniques, I went on to modeling. Now, when I modeled, what was very, very important to me was that I could identify the techniques that Michael was using, because these were the same techniques that I'm going to use in my informal practice. So, when you model, and I often get asked this question, I know people ask Michael all of this question all the time: how do you exactly model? What is it that you do when you model? The idea about modeling is not to memorize and by heart content. That is part of it, but that's not the main part of it. The main part of modeling is to represent Michael's rhythm or reproduce Michael's rhythm. When he inflects, you inflect. When he extends, you extend. When he slows down, you slow down. When he accelerates, you accelerate. Variable rhythmic speech, as Michael often refers to. And that is what you need to get out of modeling. It doesn't matter what the content is. The content is actually unimportant because you've already done the content in your cognitive phase. You are now formally practicing. So after formally practicing, after you are quite confident that you formally practiced enough, you then move into the informal practice. Now, informal practice is probably the most important part of the journey because that's putting you to the test. It's putting you to the test. It is checking whether you have internalized all the information, whether you are able to reproduce all the practice that you've been having. And again, do not get disheartened because when you are in an informal situation, you may start off trying to model and trying to use all the techniques, but then you'll forget. And then you'll forget for a few seconds and then you must remind yourself. And this will be a dance that you will be having all the time. Now, the big issue is how do you do it? And how much of time per day do you spend? I suppose there are two ways of doing this. The one way is to take it slowly, like when you go into the beach or into a pool, dip your toes, then your leg, then your abdomen, your tummy, your whole body, and then your head. So it's a process. Okay, nothing wrong with that. You can do that. Okay, it's a strategy that can work. It's a solid strategy, no problem. Or the other way to do it is immediate immersion. So you immerse yourself in the program. Okay, you can choose what you want, but the way I did it and what I found worked excellent for me was immersion. I was not too much interested in the stepwise modus operandi of doing the smooth system, ultimate smooth speech system. So I said to myself, I'm going to immerse myself. And what does that mean? What does immersion mean? Immersion means that every single moment of the day, you need to be thinking about the USS. Okay, so I'll use that as an acronym, the ultimate smooth speech system. Call it the USS system. You've got to be thinking about it every single moment. And it's easy to do that because you are speaking for most of the day. Obviously, you're not speaking when you're asleep. For most of the awake day, you are communicating. You are speaking to somebody. And because you are always using the skill, you can always think about improving it and making it better. So, immersion is not a difficult concept, especially if you are learning to speak in a new way because you're doing it all the time. It's not a skill where you're going to do it either in the morning or in the evening, that you've got to wait for it to happen. Speaking happens every single moment of the day. And you can do it. And you can think about it. So what I used to do is in the morning when I woke up, okay, I used to have a daily routine with this immersion. I would first do all the affirmations, and you can choose what affirmations you want. The ones that I like was, you are in complete control of your speech. You don't have to rush. You can just take your time. And I'm an excellent speaker. I'm a genius speaker. I kept on telling that to myself every single morning. Every single morning. And then I would model for about 10-15 minutes before I went to work. In my car, while I was driving, I would have an audio on. Previously I would be listening to music and listening to this and listening to that. I said, no, I have to immerse myself in the system. if I want to improve. So I would listen to the audio. And then I would prepare myself in my mind that when I get to my rooms, to my offices, when I'm going to meet my patients, how I am going to speak. And am I going to use my old speaking style, my new speaking style? And how I'm going to override my old speaking style. So that was always in my mind. And when I went to work, I used to see my patients, and I would then try and practice what I learned formally with modeling with my patients. Every single patient that I had where I had to explain to them problematic or a complicated clinical scenario, I would be using Michael's technique. So I basically integrated, so important word, integration. I basically integrated Michael's USS system into my daily speech. Right. And I found once I integrated it while I'm speaking to my patients, while I'm on the phone, every single moment that I was talking, I said to myself, I need to speak clearly. I need to speak smoothly. I will not get stuck. And the only way I can do that, is if I'm constantly thinking about modeling and about Michael. Now, is there anything specific that I did to trigger my new speaking style? Yes, there is. There are many triggers. Right? The one that works for me is I begin straight away, as I walk into the room, I begin to see the image of Michael. So I have an image of Michael. Okay? And that sort of starts the whole trigger. Him telling me, you don't have to rush. You can take your time. You don't have to rush. Take your time. And that's an initial trigger. And as I am speaking, I can hear Michael's rhythm in my ear, his inflections and his extensions. And once I hear his extensions and inflections, it then triggers my new speaking style. So initially, it was not easy because you walk into the room and you think of Michael, and once you get involved in speaking, you start forgetting that you have to model. But then you begin to realize, I'm going to get this fluent, or you begin to anticipate. Soon as I'm thinking of anticipation, I then start putting my modeling hat on. And when I put my modeling hat on, I suddenly realize that I'm not just fluent anymore. I'm pretty fluent, and I can speak clearly now. So it's this wanting. How much do you want it? That's a question you've got to ask yourself. Do you really want to speak clearly? Do you really want that freedom? If you want that freedom, you will keep on thinking about speaking clearly every single moment of the day. And if you do that, if you keep on thinking every single moment of the day about smooth speaking, about clear speaking, about not being disfluent, I promise you, you will not forget. You will be able to model, you'll be able to speak clearly, you'll be able to use all the techniques beautifully, and your speech will be clear. I always say this, that during presentations or an interview, or when you're speaking to a group of people, you go into a speaking mode where maybe you inflect a bit more, you extend a bit more. And then when that ends and you come and speak to your friends, you seem to put the dial right down, and then you are back to your disfluent self. So the idea is you should be in character all the time, like an actor in a sense. So you've got to embody your model. You've got to be like an actor. So you could be at a 7 or 8 during the presentation, or maybe even a 9. When you finish the presentation and you come back, to normality, and you're speaking to friends or a group of friends, do not turn the dial down. You probably move it to a 3 or a 2, depending where you are. So you are still extending. You are still inflecting, but not to the degree that you would inflect or extend. And if you have that in your mind, the dial, Think about the dial. If you think about it and you say, I'm always going to be somewhere between 1 and 10. If it's a formal presentation, I'm at an 8 or 9. If I'm in an informal informal meeting with friends and colleagues, I will bring it down to a 2 or 3. But remember this, techniques and skills are on their own not enough. Techniques and skills are not enough. They will only take you to a certain level. If you want to reach a level of automaticity where you are not anticipating, right? You're not thinking about stuttering. You're not thinking about being disfluent. Okay? You have to change your speaking identity. You have to change the way you speak. Because your brain, okay, has worked out a habit of speaking. It's worked out a habit of speaking. And it always wants to default to that habit. So you are initially going to find resistance to beat that habit. But as your brain begins to realize and understand that it's so much better to speak clear and to speak fluently, and that by using that identity, you trick the brain into speaking fluently, your brain then eventually says, you know what, I like that. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to create a habit. I'm going to create a habit for this new speaking style. And then this new speaking style becomes dominant. And it overrides the original script. That is what you got to aim for. And you know you've reached it when you are not anticipating anymore, when you're not thinking about stuttering, when you're not worried about words, you're not thinking that you're going to get stuck. And I can promise you, by immersing yourself in USS, in Michael's ultimate smooth speaking system, you will achieve your goal much quicker, much faster. And remember to always focus on the positive. Never focus too much on the negative. So you must appreciate your successes. Accumulate your successes. If you accumulate your successes, that has a positive feedback on your speaking style. And you become more confident, you speak more clearly. Remember that you are ultimately in control of your speech and ultimately in control of your life. It's up to you what you want. So think about it. If you want to be free, to say whatever you want to say, to go into any interview and do it with aplomb, if you want to teach, if you want to present, you have that freedom. If you really want that, where you are not hampered, where you can communicate your talent and your skills for what they are. If you want that, if you really want that, it takes effort. It takes effort, but it can be done. It can be done. All you have to do is listen to Michael's advice and follow his program. There will be modification on how each individual in the USS system works and how it works for you. So I can only tell you how it worked for me. And I can tell you within 4 to 5 months, I have almost fluent speech. I do not have a problem. I can stand up in a crowd. I can give any radio interview. I can present without having a problem and without worrying that I'm going to get stuck. So previously, the problem I had was inconsistency. I wasn't sure that if I was going to do a presentation, that it was going to be absolutely smooth and I won't get stuck. So it was that fear that what if I get stuck? Because I didn't have that framework and I didn't have that confidence of saying that no, I'm never going to get stuck. What Michael's system has done, it has given me that consistency. It has given me skills. It has given me techniques that I know I won't get stuck. And if it happens, I have the tools to deal with it. Just knowing that is so reassuring. It's absolutely reassuring. So, I want to thank Michael. Thank you, Michael. I want to thank his ultimate smooth speaking system that has transformed me, it's transformed my life. And I now look forward to speak. And I also want to say, this is an ongoing process. It's not that you wake up one morning and say, I've got fluent speech and that's it. No, you have to carry on practicing, and you've got to carry on doing it, not to the same intensity that you've been doing it. But remember, this is an ongoing project and an ongoing process. But you can do it. If you really want to have smooth, calm, and confident speech, it's in your hands, and you can do it. Thank you very much.